Hey everyone, Drew Murray from D20 Advice here, and I said in my last video that I had a couple of things to talk about, and I only spoke about one thing, which isn't a couple of things. So I talked about professional DMing and the fact that I'm starting to professional DM. Yeah, I think that's the term. And I wanted to talk to you about something else. Modules versus homebrew. I've spoken before about the fact that I find modules more difficult to get into, that homebrew just comes naturally to me. The idea of taking the bare bones of the rule set and developing something from that, knowing that orcs and goblins are a thing, that there will be general behaviours expected of them by the player group, that I can establish expected behaviours from the character group, and I can play with things in between there. I can provide entertainment from the metagame and from the game itself. I understand that there's a plethora of other monsters. I know briefly about them. I can quickly check them up in the monster manual as and when. I can make up things on the fly. And I'm fairly good at that sort of improvisation. Call it the drama school upbringing. When it comes to the homebrew versus module mindset, I find it easier to go with homebrew stuff because it just comes to my mind easier. When I have to stop what I'm doing and read from a book, it doesn't come as easy. I'm then sticking with what's in the book. I'm then afraid to improvise around about what's in the book because what if that then contradicts something that comes later? How will I handle this? Well, I think what's happening is that I am still lacking in imagination in some sense. This is a critique of my abilities and my methods. Alright? I find homebrew easier because I have full reign and full imagination. That's not to say that modules don't allow you to use your imagination, but that there's a certain expectation. Now, I feel that a module is someone else's game, that it's some set of criteria that people have set out and we need to hit each beat. Now, that's not necessarily the case. I often read about stories online with people complaining about their parties going off the rails and going in completely different directions from where was anticipated. These are the sorts of games that I've revelled in. My improvised games have complete free reign. You can go absolutely anywhere, do absolutely anything. There will just be consequences. So it's freedom, but with the usual constraints that you find in the real world. Modules can be like this, I am slowly realising. Because there isn't the module police. They're not going to come round to my house and slap handcuffs on me just because I've modified something. So if I quickly skim read while running the adventure and see, there's 4 goblins up ahead, I'll just deal with that and go back to my players. Right, perception checks, please, because you said that you were looking around and trying to strain your ears. I want to see if you detect anything. They roll relatively low and go, well, you hear a few blips of water further down the tunnel, and you also hear this strange skittering sound. Could be rats. And the players decide to do nothing about it. They get ambushed by goblins. Fantastic. If I then later find out that those goblins were supposed to be part of a raiding party and were supposed to be pillaging something in the area that I didn't describe. And so the pieces have finished that combat encounter, moved on to the next area, and as I quickly read up on the next area, I see that part of the treasure hoard or the stuff in the area with the goblins was meant to be these bodies that were meant to be a clue for something, and I've left it out. My goodness, I've left something out. I've failed, is what I would normally think. I'm starting to soften. I'm now starting to think that, alright, I can make a quick note that they were supposed to be there, and I can make a quick note of what clues they were supposed to provide, and I can try and place those elsewhere in the dungeon if I later find that that sort of thing was necessary. Now this is if I'm running a module entirely from the book at the time, with no preparation beforehand. Because I found myself doing very little preparation beforehand for game sessions. This little preparation doesn't result in a subpar story or gaming experience. Because I've got everything in my mind, to hand, the fact that I'm making it all up on the fly, but still connecting it to what was already there, has been, if I say so myself, a fairly impressive trait of mine. That I've managed to create consistent narratives over the course of years, without making notes or referring back to them. This is a trait that I'm changing. I'm starting to make more notes because I'm wanting to refer back to them and make sure that I am remaining as consistent as I believe myself to be. But so far, I've got a pretty good track record of this. But when it comes to modules, it's not already in my head. And so I feel like I'm on shaky ground. What I should be doing is reading the modules cover to cover, getting as much of the core information that I can. I was recently shown a video by a Matt Colville, who I've seen a couple of his videos before, and I think on a previous video on this channel I called him Mike. That was pointed out to me. So I apologise, Matt. It's Matt, not Mike. So Matthew Colville, who does fairly good videos. I watched his one on diplomacy recently, which was quite good. I'm now looking for that game. I really want to play that game. I initially watched his video on the West Marches style of gameplay, which is the style of gameplay that I've usually stuck with, although not as consciously. And with my play-by-post, I'm now advertising that, yes, this is the name of it because I've learned it from this video. It's good shorthand. It helps people understand what I'm talking about. Now, this gentleman, Matt Colville, he was talking in one of his videos about modules and that he would skip to the back and see what the ending is. And then just take main information from each section as he needs it, so that he could improvise around things. And that is a good idea. I'm currently in the process of creating my own modules, which will be released as part of the DM's Guild, Dungeon Masters Guild, that Wizards of the Coast has set up. These modules will have that information at the front and center. This will be the first stuff that you read, stuff that I view as the important stuff that allows you to then improv around things. Treating it like a news article in journalism. You start with the most important information and everything else is just clarifications of that if you need it and if you want to read further. That's essentially it. That's how I'm going to be creating my modules. And my modules are going to be based on games that I've run. So these are modules that are essentially already tested. They just weren't as modules at the time. These are created adventures of mine that I'll be putting into published modules. The real question is going to be whether or not I think that my adventures can be run from modules. To which I say, with all the things that I've spoken about in this video so far, yes. Yes, you can run my modules fairly easily. You can run any modules fairly easily. You just need to allow yourself to mess up. You can beforehand do loads of prep and you'll likely not mess up at all, and that is also fine. But if you do find yourself in a situation where you've done little to no preparation, but you understand the rules of the game that you're about to run, and you've got the module book in front of you, don't be afraid to go off book. You can easily find your way back, or you can use just the start of the adventure as the kickoff point, and you can just go on your own from there. And you can just bring in occasional elements from the module as bits of inspiration when things start getting a little stale. That is also okay. I'm giving you permission to use modules as just inspiration rather than set games. There's a game called Hero Quest, for a start, which has set scenarios. But there's another one called Descent. I think it's Descent. It is Descent. And that is also a game where you have a booklet with set scenarios. The person controlling the monsters and the scenario will have certain monsters that they can pick, or a certain grouping that they can pick from, and set those in set areas. And the scenario is always that. The storyline is always the preamble that they provide. You have to break into a safe to try and get a magical relic. And there's a vampire that's racing you to it, and they can just phase through doors, but you've got to try and either bash through the door or magically unlock it. That's fine too. That's fine for those games. Dungeons & Dragons isn't those games. You can improvise around them. I mean, you can improvise in Descent and Hero Quest as well. You can make up your own scenarios. There's nothing stopping you from doing so. You have the game. It's your game. But with Dungeons & Dragons, it's more free. You have more freedom to do more that's different. In Descent or Hero Quest, you don't have a vertical plane. You don't have a Z-axis. You can't ascend vertically in the same way that you can in Dungeons and Dragons. You have not only a three-dimensional space, but you have altered states of reality that you could also visit at any point. You can go beyond a table grid map in distance. You can be further away, you can be much closer, you can grow and you can shrink, and you can visit a fire plane and shoot fireballs down into a water plane, or whatever you wanted to do, depending on how you've got your planes set up. They could be discrete universes, or that they could be just bits of the world that just happen to embody these particular elements. That's going into another subject entirely. But my point is, you can improvise with modules. This is something that I have forced myself to realize. The final push was from Matt Colville's video, where he suggested looking at the back. And that's when I realized that what I was doing was being afraid of getting things wrong. And that information, how it's supposed to end, would fix that for me. I would feel free at that point if I knew what my idea of the endpoint was supposed to be, to improvise within. If I know how it starts and I know how it ends, I can improvise. I can do what I want. I can faff with the lines, and that's fine. And then if I introduce elements that are familiar to the module, if those players then go and play the module again another time, they're having a fresh experience with some familiarity. And that, I think, is what is best drawn from the experience. But yes, that's me. That's my thing. That's my piece. I said it. That was embarrassing. So yeah, that's my piece. I've said it. Yeah. So how's your day been? Well, it's been nice chatting, but, gotta go off and do things. No, 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 no.